I've been watching the new Ripley's. It's got a lot of heart. It feels like it's a very nice evolution of what Ripley's used to be. Like, it still has the extraordinary, but now we have human interest. We have science behind it. It feels like it has a little bit more to make it more modern. How did you get it to where it is today?
You just sold the show for me. Thank
Okay,
you.
there we go. Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it. That was the plan. That was the approach. That's the approach that we took. They're all people who are overcoming great difficulties or are honing an amazing skill. So the idea was to just celebrate them and not point fingers. We don't use the F word, the freak show. You know, there's freakish people doing freakish stuff, but we try and put it in a more positive context. There's a lot of overcoming difficulties, setbacks to their lives. To me, it's very inspiring.
Has it inspired you to try anything new? Or,
yeah, we're a bunch of wimps in real life, man. We can do a lot more than we think we can. Because once you see what these people have overcome, you're like, wow. You really start to think, could I do that? Could I overcome that? And many times I'm like, no. You know, seriously, real physical challenges.
What drew you to the show, and how did you sort of get involved in it?
I like anything. People call sometimes randomly, hey, you want to do this, do that. So as an actor, you judge an offer based on its merits. And one of the aspects is who you're working for. You know, and I don't know anyone who hasn't heard of Ripley's, believe it or not. You say that, they go, oh, is that back on the air again? You know, because it's been around for a long time. And it's 100 now. It's 100 years old. So you guys are old, man.
Not quite that old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was part of the reason. You know, you judge it based on who they are. And they've been around forever. They have quite a big organization. They have 10 countries, is it?
10 countries, over 100 attractions.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Wow.
That's a lot going on. They don't need me to sell their show. You know, so they partner with Travel Channel, which is a pretty good fit for the new Travel Channel. New Travel Channel is not dive-ins, dive bars, drive-ins.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Some sort of combination.
It's all creepy and weird now,
Oh, okay.
but it's the new era. So it fits.
Mr. Campbell, hi.
Bruce is good.
Okay. Mr. Bruce. Okay. Detroit, 1982, Chrysler infomercial. How did that prepare you for doing the reboot for Ripley's Believe It or Not?
Well, I started doing stuff like that, doing what we called industrial films, and they were really training films. I would train car salesmen how to sell the interior of a car to a customer, but nobody will ever see these films. They're only to be shown to car salesmen. So I've done stuff that no one will. I have a copy of it because I randomly happen to have a copy of some of the stuff. Nobody's ever seen this stuff ever, and a lot of work went into these things because you're doing teleprompter work because you have to explain why the cross section of the Chrysler seat is better than the cross section of the Ford and Chevy seat. It's a lot of work. So some of my best work will never be seen. But it trained me to do this type of work. So when this thing came up, I'm like, I got this. I can do teleprompter stuff. I can do industrials. So I'm just the loop is closing. I'm just coming full circle back to where I started.
Ripley's is sorry, my voice cracked there. Ripley's is kind of different from your usual projects because it's a reality show.
Yeah.
So how do you approach such a different medium?
You got to match what it is. You know,
Yeah.
if you're a spokesman, you have to act the part of a spokesman. So
Okay.
it's not really me hosting the show.
Yeah.
It's my version of how a host would host that show, how I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's a weird amalgamation. I'm still an actor,
Yeah.
acting like a host, but it doesn't seem like it, or does it? It might be my best character ever, playing the part of a host.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
But as executive producer, you had a few notes for yourself as to the role.
Oh,
of
I
Thomas
yelled
that
at
you-
myself a lot.
As well, you should.
Yeah.
So these old infomercials and internal training videos, that's your own, believe it or not, museum that you have in your own house for the
Yeah.
that's the tour through the ages. So
Some were
believe it or
actually
not-
really hard to do. There's a shit ton of information you had to say. And, you know, say like McPherson strut suspension. That shit doesn't roll off the tongue real easy. And they'll string that together because the writers who write technical stuff, they don't care about the flow of your sentence. They care about saying the name of the McPherson strut suspension correctly.
Yeah. What's like the weirdest infomercial, or not infomercial, information video you had to do?
Well, aren't they just weird conceptually, all of them? Right? Isn't it weird that you have to train salesmen how to sell a car? Because you're showing them stuff that they wouldn't even know. So
Yeah.
we're very vital to a salesman. They're not going to cut a seat in half to show that we're going to do it for them. And they can even show this video too. They'll show it sometimes in the dealership. So I'm huge in Chrysler dealerships. Huge.
So with your legacy in horror up to this point, what's your take on more films going back to sort of practical effects after going into CG?
CG had to run its course because everyone was fascinated with CG. Oh, let's just do CG. But the problem with CG is it would very often defy optics. Like a creature would be here on frame 1, frame 3, it's right in front of your face. So to the point where our eyes can't even adjust because the optics are not correct. So they had to kind of work that out. And then they had to come to the horrible realization that special effects could not be the actual story. Whoopsie. Whoops. You mean we have to have a story? Hopefully they're coming around to the realization that effects can be used very effectively to tell a story. Like Forrest Gump. There are people in Iowa who think that Gary Sinise has no legs. So when you watch that movie, they made special effects work to tell the story of a single feather flipping around during the opening sequence, and it lands all the way at Tom Hanks' feet. Looks like a real feather floating through the sky, landing at his feet. It was a pain in the ass to do, that opening sequence. To get Gary Sinise to look like he has no legs, that's actually a pain in the ass to film with the stumps and the thing and a special chair, and they had to remove his legs digitally. But you can't tell. So they used the effects to tell the story of a guy with no legs. You can find an actor, I suppose, who has no legs, but the point is the digital process can really help you tell a story, but it's not the story. I mean, once you see a superhero throw another superhero through one building, 8 buildings, 10 buildings, it doesn't matter. That's not the story. You can't tell me that that's the story. Superheroes fighting, falling 100 stories. What's your story?
How did this project come to you?
In a fever dream. No, a phone call from my agent. And then you evaluate it, like anything. So it wasn't some special way. I'm not related to Robert Ripley. Although he was an interesting character in and of himself, Mr. Ripley.
Be a good documentary.
It probably would be. I think he was the original host as well.
Yeah, 1949.
He nailed it in 1949.
Yeah, he died.
But it shows you how long it's been around. Yeah, he died,
Well, he got a heart attack and then died 3 days later.
In 1949?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
There's your next acting role, the biopic.
Hey.
Yeah, tie it all in together, synergy. So in Ripley's now, you're filming in the actual warehouse, correct?
We were, yeah. We don't always have to go there. If
Right.
they do further shows, because they have places all in multiple countries. They have beautiful aquarium across the street here.
Yeah.
I would move it around. I'd base out of one of their museums.
Right.
And, you want to see their stuff. If we stay in one area with a bunch of crates behind me, you only see so much. get some shit out of the crates.
You're seeing more than what the cameras are seeing when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
filming there. What's the biggest distraction?
I
Is there,
can't-
is
I'm
there
not
one
telling
item
you
there that you're
anything.
like, I can't stop looking at that? I'm not looking at the teleprompter.
Well, the
I'm
tallest
looking at
man in
that.
the world, they have a replica of the tallest man in the world.
Oh.
And it's the correct height, correct proportions. I mean, that's when you get next to the guy and you realize how unbelievably tall that is. Like you're coming up, like I'm almost 6'1". I mean, I'm like just above the guy's waist. It's ridiculous. So it helps put it in perspective. So they have guys making models. They have a whole shop. It's a big deal.
Anything smaller than that you've thought about taking home with you at the end of the day?
I'm not going to tell you what I stole out of their warehouse. They'll find out when they do inventory next fall.
So you are a New York Times bestselling author.
Thank you for pointing that out.
You are an award-winning actor.
What awards? I always see that, and I'm like Chainsaw Awards.
You do
The
voiceover
Fangoria
work.
Chainsaw Award. Is that what I won?
You're a director. You're an executive director on the reboot of Ripley's Believe It or Not. But here's the question. The question is, where do you feel most comfortable? What's your sweet spot?
Yes. It's job rotation. I come from Detroit. You know, you work in the factories. They'd have you working on license plates on Monday. Mm-hmm. Tuesday, you're putting fenders on. They're trying to keep you motivated and interested. Because the fascinating thing, as soon as they stopped, the workers used to move around the factory to the parts of the car. And Henry Ford figured out how to make them not have to move around. They could stay and all the parts would move around. The second that happened, the dropout rate from factory workers went up to 30% because they now instantly got bored out of their skull because they're not moving all day long. So same as an actor. I like different perspectives. Every actor should be a director so that they know what that process is like. They know the director's problems. You know, they realize where they are on the totem pole of things. So I think you should be familiar with writing. What's the story? Tell a story, you know, how to tell a story. It takes a long time for filmmakers to figure out what a story is. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. What the hell is that? You know, we didn't know. So it's that. I like doing the little mixed bag. And the writing world is very respectful compared to the film business. If there are very few chefs when you write a book. Like I addressed my editor's changes for my latest book. It took about 15 minutes. And if I wrote a screenplay, I'd have 10 pages of single-spaced notes from some 26-year-old kid who doesn't know shit from Shinola, but they feel like they got to justify their job. So it's fun to go into a world where they actually respect you. And they can add, too. It's weird. In the literary world, they can add and subtract, and they actually cut you checks instead of, you know, being in Star Wars and still being in deficit. Star Wars still not being in profit. I wonder if that's the case. I wonder if Fox has actually declared whether Star Wars is in profit. Because for years it wasn't. And you're like, really? Really? Star Wars is not in profit. So it's good to do different stuff. You get exposed to different people too. Different, like making a book is whole different story than making a movie. It's kind of cool, the difference.
Now you talk about job rotation. You like moving around and meeting
Sure. I'm going to be a
different people.
reporter next.
And one of the hallmarks of your career is that you and Sam Raimi keep coming back together after
Sure.
Your long friendship and work relationship. So how do you and Sam Raimi, why do you keep coming back together, and how do you keep up with each other's ideas?
I think Sam's the best director working. I think he's one of the best directors in the business, probably top 5 as far as technical abilities. Watch Spider-Man 2. I think it's one of the best superhero movies, period. And I think it's the best of the trilogy. He's really amazing at exponential learning, what he learns from one movie to the next, technically. Like he actually read the American Cinematographer's Manual. Now, you want to read stuff that'll make you want to hang yourself with technical information about apertures and film speeds. He read it. He's like, I think I should know how a camera operates, because as a director, that's my tool. How can I use apertures and exposures to get a certain look or a certain dynamic? So that's what's fun about working with him. Because I always go, where the hell did you learn that trick? Because he would always really big leaps every time we'd work together. And he needs me.
It's the main reason.
That's all I'll say to that. He needs
The world needs you.
me. Nah, Sam Raimi needs me.
So with Ash vs. Evil Dead now over, what's your take on the legacy of that character in the horror?
I'm
sphere?
fine with it, Nick, because we got to finally do it. I got to address it to my maximum abilities right now, and I felt that we did that, and I felt we honored the fans too, because we gave them a pseudo ending. They will never be happy with anything that we do, but in this case, we were like, okay, we don't know if we're going to get canceled or not. Let's make sure we end this particular season with something that could be considered an ending. So that's what we did, and thank God we did it, because we got canned. So if we didn't do that ending, people would be going, "Where's Ash? What happened?" So we took care of that business. Yeah, box checked.
Foresight, yeah.
How did it feel to come back to the role of Ash after so long?
Hard, painful. I pulled another hamstring. Yeah, there's a series of embarrassing emails to Rick Jacobson, season 2, I think near the end, where the episodes would keep getting bigger and bigger as the season would end up, because things are coming to a head story-wise. So it's always fights and falling and all the worst crap. And so there'd be these emails of like, "Hey Rick, I woke up this morning and I'm not sure if I can run today. Can you make sure that that my stunt guy, Raisho Vezilev, can you make sure he's ready to go the next day? Hey Rick, my left knee is kind of fucked up. Hey, can I just like stand over the guy? I was falling apart. My whole body was just disintegrating. So that's part of the reason for not doing it anymore. It's when the time to get the walker out, you're done. If you can't do it anymore, don't do it.
Or if it's time to get the walker out, maybe it's time to reprise Bubba Hotep. Maybe it's just time to reprise a different role.
No, I'm done with that one too. I already told those guys I'm done with that one.
But in the legacy of your film career, is there anything that you've wanted to sneak into the Ripley's warehouse? Have you snuck anything in there to be like, oh, look at the glossy 8x10 of that handsome fella? Who's that right there?
I'll be in their museum. I don't know when or how, but I'll get in there.
The new reboot of Ripley's Believe It or Not deals with extraordinary people and circumstances. Personally, just to share a little bit of personal information,
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
I've had an experience once with 3 little creatures, 3 little aliens. I believe it to be true.
Okay. I had an alien encounter that I consider
real. I'm curious to
real.
find out about your interesting experience.
In?
Maybe seeing a UFO or something?
I did have a UFO encounter 3 months ago, maybe, that I consider legit. I live in a very rural part of Oregon, and we have the Siskiyou Mountains, which run east and west. Most mountain ranges run north and south. This runs east and west. So I'm talking on the phone, doing an interview like this, and I look out over the mountain range, and from behind it, what is the south side of the mountain, a big white blobby light came up. And it was very warbly. It wasn't colorful. There wasn't like this business. I couldn't tell a shape. It was round. It was moving like the speed of a helicopter, moving toward you. When something moves toward you, it compresses the movement, so you don't really know how fast it's going. It's moving, but it doesn't look like it's moving very fast. So I'm looking at it. I look at it. I've seen all the jets going overhead where I live. They're up at 30,000 feet. This was about just over the mountains, which is 7,000 feet. I'm talking on the phone, looking at this thing, and then behind me, directly behind me in the foyer of my house, are 2 entrance lights, each controlled with a different dimmer switch. One of the specific lights went bzzz and burned down to about half strength and then came back up. And I turned and I looked at the light, and when I turned back, the other light on the opposite side of the entrance went bzzz down to half and then back up. And I went, that's weird. Looked back, light was gone. No big dramatic finish, but it was moving at a speed that it would have still been in my view had it not done something much different than what it was doing, which I think it was fucking with me. Because look at this. Look at this. If the whole house was a brownout, all the lights would go down to half. Mm-hmm. Why would 2 specific lights? That guy was, some creature was going, look at this. Oh, look, he's got that kind of light. Oh, look at that one. Oh, he sees this. Let's go by. We're gone. They were fucking with me. I'm convinced of it. Why? And if it was a blackout, the whole house would have gone out. Why would 2 individual lights be operated separately? Never happened before or since in the 20 years that I've lived in this house. So to me, it was directly related. Could it have been some military bullshit with some guys screwing around that way? Yeah. Very rural area. There's nothing, 2 hours south of me, there's nothing. So I believe there's stuff out there. It'd be silly for us to look at that ridiculous galaxy up there and not think that there's something going on. That's stupid. There's probably, it's the ocean up there. I mean, it's the ocean times a billion. We have no idea what's up there. We're going to find out some crazy shit, and they better come and help us out. I need the big plastic magnet. Like, there's got to be some aliens out there who go, we had this plastic problem millennia ago. You need the plastic evader. And they just fly it over the planet, and it just sucks up all the plastic. Because they go, we dealt with this. So it's time for an advanced civilization to teach us some shit, like right now. So I think they've always been here. So if they're listening, let's get going.
All right, guys, last round of questions.
I do have one question. You're a master storyteller. I've seen you in presentations and conventions. At what point in your life did you realize you had this gift? I mean, I could listen to you read, I don't know, ingredients off a cereal box, and I find it...
Oh, I've got that here. I have a whole list I can read. I don't know, sir. That's not for me to say. I think... But stories are kind of important to pass along, at least professionally, I think, sometimes, because a lot of information is lost. The movie Goonies, it took place, there's a lot of water. They were underwater caverns and stuff in the movie. They shot on the old Warner Brothers stage. And nobody knew how to work the water. It was where Esther Williams, the swimming sort of actress, she made these water musicals. They had to get an old guy out of a rest home to come and show them how to work the water. He goes, that valve, you turn that thing over, that turns that on, and they didn't know how to drain it and everything. So no one had shared that information, even in a union environment. They forgot how to use the Warner Brothers water tank on the Warner Brothers lot. Why did they forget that? Because no one had passed the information along. So sometimes, if there's any value in storytelling, that's where history's good. History is just stories, and there's boring history books and there's really great history books. I just think history is important. If you don't know where you came from, how do you know where you're going? But history repeats itself. We don't know anything. We've forgotten everything. We're making mistakes in our country now that we made 20 years ago. But not us, not the United States of America.
Canada.
We're very grateful for you as our northern partners, our northern neighbors, by the way. We're so fucking lucky to have Canada as our neighbors. We can have such D-bags as neighbors. Unfortunately, you're the one with a D-bag neighbor. All right, there you go.
Anything else?
I think the only thing that I want to leave it on is to bring it back earlier what you were saying, the kind of things you were saying about Sam Raimi. You're talking about how you're the type of actor who you want to know how to write, you want to know how to produce. The more you know, the better it makes you at any one thing.
Theoretically.
I can see from that conversation why you're drawn to Sam. Even talking about Sam reading technical manuals and doing everything kind of leads into that art form. Learning more things will help
Sure.
you with the thing you want to do.
Sure.
Is there another person that you've worked with in your career that has that kind of fire, that same thing that brings someone like you and Raimi together, that you're like, I wish I
No,
worked
they're
with
pretty
this
rare.
person
They're
more.
rare. It's a rare combination because sometimes you have directors who are great at technical stuff, but they don't know what to tell an actor. And there's some people who are great at working with actors, but their movies look like shit and it's boring and they don't know where to put the camera. So it's really a tough find of someone who can do both, someone who can manage the technical side, the stunt side, Sam makes The Quick and the Dead. He had to deal with Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio, Russell Crowe. It was a ridiculous cast. So I'm like, Sam had to deal with Gene Hackman. On the first day of shooting, Gene said no to everything that Sam asked him to do. But because Sam had an answer for the reasons why he wanted him to do everything that he asked him to do, he had a thorough and irrevocable character-based reason. So he finally won Gene Hackman over. Because Gene said, no, I'm not doing that. And he'd go, you don't have to do it, but here's why I'm having you do it. And you get to the next thing. Well, I'm not doing that either. Well, you don't have to do it, but here's why I was having you do it. He got him to do everything because he finally had an answer. He wasn't some bullshit director. Because Gene Hackman, he goes, look, he told Sam later, sorry, I got a son who's older than you. So he was pissing on Sam's shoes the first day of shooting. Like, are you full of shit? Because if you are, I'm going to bury you. I'm going to bury you. Some actors will do that. If you're not ready to dance, you're dead. Because now I'm going to tell you where I'm going to sit, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say, because you're not ready. You're not ready for Gene Hackman. But Sam was ready for him. And that's great to watch. The example was this. Gene Hackman comes out, signals the start of the gunfight. So Sam says, I want you to come out and tip your hat, and start the gunfight. He goes, I'm not going to do that. He goes, you don't have to, but you got to start the gunfight. I don't care if you tip your hat, wink, point. It's on you. I don't care how you do it. He goes, okay, I'll tip my hat. And Sam goes, I want you to come over here and sit in this chair over here and whisper this line of dialogue that's not in the movie. I want you to say, what are the odds on the kid? He goes, I'm not going to go over there and sit down there. He goes, you don't have to, but look at all the extras. All the extras are standing. Those are the peasants. You're the king. The king sits. You're the only character sitting. Look around. He goes, okay, I'll sit in that chair, but I'm not going to whisper what are the odds on the kid. He goes, you don't have to. Later in the movie, they're going to realize that Leonardo DiCaprio was your son, and they're going to flash back and realize that you actually cared whether your son, the odds of your son were good or bad. So I wanted to introduce some complexity to your character that later they'll reflect on. It's not in the script, so you don't have to say it. But he did everything because he had a reason. Now that's rare. Some actors would cave. They'd shit themselves if an actor got in their face like that. I mean, so to be able to have those answers. Every actor is different too. Leonardo DiCaprio, what is his approach? What's Russell Crowe's approach? You really have these weird personalities to shuffle. And it's kind of a magician who can do that and make you do stuff that you don't even think you're doing. How to wear an actor down, get their defenses down, get them tired, and get their confidence in you. Like Gene Hackman, after that first day of filming, he knew that he was fine. He knew that this guy, he knew the story he was telling, and he knew how to get it. Never had another problem from him. But, so that's why Sam is.
Sam's giving you that same feeling.
He's
over the course of
special.
your
He's
career,
special.
yeah.
I totally trust him because he is ahead of everybody. He's ahead of everybody on set. Everybody's trying to catch him. They're trying to follow him the whole day. That's why he can get a crew to follow him. Because it's like, what is he up to? And he's really fun. He's bigger than life. He needs those jodhpurs that the old guys would wear with the riding boots and a crop that he would hit you with, He's like one of those guys. He needs the old-time speaker, like that. the old, college, what is it, the cheerleaders.
The bullhorn.
Yeah, the
or
old
the paper
bullhorn. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
an old bullhorn kind of guy.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Good?
Take
All
care.
right.
Bye.